Misha Glenny. Misha, you mentioned yesterday that you are fluently speaking Czech language.
So my family is Celtic by origin, although my father was a translator of Russian literature and spoke various languages. So my idea of a teenage rebellion was not to learn Russian, but to learn a different Slav language, and I chose Czech. So I started teaching myself Czech when I was about 19 or 20, and then when I finished university, I got a 10-month British Council scholarship to Prague. This was in 1981, September 1981. So I was in Prague when Jaruzelski, General Jaruzelski of Poland, Wojciech Jaruzelski, mounted his internal coup, state of emergency, in Poland. And I remember to this day the title lead of Rude Pravo, the communist newspaper, the next day, Rozhodný krok k obraně socialismu v Polsku. And so...
What was your experience in 81 in Czechoslovakia?
Well, one of my main reasons for doing this was to experience so-called reálný socialismus, socialism as it was practiced. I mean, it was fascinating because it was a dark time of the Cold War. Havel was still in prison, and but I met quite a large number of Charter 77 members when I was there. Dean Spear, Uhl, and so on. Hayek was still alive. Jerzy. I was, of course, amongst early 20-somethings. I was something of a novelty, a British person studying in Prague, trying to learn Czech. So I had a very interesting time. I started doing odd jobs, doing voiceovers for Zetor tractors from Slovakia.
Oh, really?
Absolutely.
Did you?
And
for exportation? Or?
Yes, and exactly for the export markets. And then I also, one of my best friends later on became the head of foreign intelligence, Olda Cherny. He was head of dubbing at Barrandov Studios. And so he got me to help him translate movies into Czech from English. So I translated with him Alien into Czech.
Did you?
Vetřelec, yes.
Vetřelec.
And then, bizarrely, 25 years later, I was at a dinner and I found myself sitting next to John Hurt, okay, one of the stars of Vetřelec, who fell over and the monster came out of his stomach. And I told him that I translated his death throes into Czech, and he was delighted.
When you speak Czech, and you understand Slovak, I think.
Yeah.
So you're still smiling. Is it a funny language for you? Because I don't mean it like offensively, but there is a new British ambassador to Czech Republic. Yeah. He's doing pretty funny video in Czech language.
Yeah.
To communicate.
Yeah.
And it looks like there is kind of a very close proximity between British and Czech thinking. What is this?
Well, there's certainly a wry sense of humour.
Right.
And I think that really is true, although the traditions are very different, although you do see some cultural affinities between Czechs, particularly in the 1920s and 1930s. People like Čapek were really fascinated with England. But it's I love the fact that I speak Czech. I really enjoy it. I don't speak it enough, but I still read it, and that's the way to keep your languages up, is just keep reading them. And I bought 2 Slovak books yesterday at the...
Hanna Kubatova?
Kubatova and Šimečka Martin.
Okay. But Hanna is published by Oxford, right? So
I know, which I didn't know.
Yeah,
I
right.
bought it in Slovak,
yes.
And then she tells me that it's published in Oxford University Press, but she said it costs about £130 or
yeah, because it's academic publishing.
Because it's an academic publishing, so I prefer to read it in Slovak in that case.
Was this Prague experience or Czechoslovak experience the one of the reasons you decided to go cover the Yugoslavia war?
Living in Czechoslovakia and in communist Czechoslovakia, learning Czech was absolutely central to everything that I did later on. After that, I started smuggling books and Xerox machines into Czechoslovakia for Charter 77 and taking material out as well. So I became quite an accomplished smuggler for a period of time.
So you did potřelec and you smuggled books, right?
Yes, exactly.
And some ads for Zetor.
That's right, and some ads for Zetor. So Czech was very important. By now I was reading a huge amount about the history of Central Europe, Southeastern Europe, communism and so on and so forth. So when I moved to Vienna in 1986 to become the Vienna correspondent, a freelance correspondent for The Guardian, one of the first stories that broke when I arrived there was the Kurt Waldheim story, the former UN Secretary General, who it turned out had lied about his past. He said he was in Vienna throughout the war, but actually he was a junior intelligence officer in the Balkans with the Wehrmacht, in a lot of the worst parts of the Balkans. So I then, for that story, I traveled down to Zagreb and Belgrade to research the story there. And very quickly I realized that even though Serbo-Croat was a Slav language, a South Slav language, and Czech is a Western Slav language, that actually it's quite easy to start adapting all of the grammatical precepts of Czech into Serbo-Croat. So I started teaching myself Serbo-Croat. So before the war broke out, I also spoke Serbo-Croat, which was hugely important when it came to covering the Yugoslav war, not just in terms of being able to read the newspapers and stuff like that, but in more practical sense, you come up against a roadblock and you're not quite sure, is this a Croat roadblock, is this a Serbian roadblock? And so you listen to how they're speaking, listen to their language, and you can tell who has Serbian cultural references, who has Croat cultural references, all through their accent and the different dialectical variations of Serbo-Croat. So it was a very, very practical issue.
Misha, did you see the war coming in the Balkans?
In the Balkans, absolutely. I have to say I was rather bad on not seeing the Russian invasion, the full-scale Russian invasion of Ukraine. But
you didn't, right? You didn't see.
I didn't. But in the Balkans, I was writing as early as 1990 that the war is coming. In fact, the first time that I discussed this was in 1987 with a Slovene member of the Politburo, Cyril Ribicic, who said to me in 1987 that what Milosevic was doing had the real prospect of ending in a civil war in Yugoslavia, and Ribicic was correct. So in 1990, I made a documentary, radio documentary with the woman who's now my wife, Kirsty Lang, in Yugoslavia. This was in August 1990. We went into the Serb areas of Croatia where they were all tooling up with weaponry, and they were showing off their weapons and things like that. And we did this documentary which at the end said, we are heading towards war in Yugoslavia. And the BBC went nuts and said, you can't say there's going to be a war in the middle of Europe in 1990. That's not going to happen. But they ran the program nonetheless. And after the war broke out, everyone thought that I could predict the future sort of thing, because they were so surprised. But I was also referred to at the BBC because of my my pessimism. I was referred to as Misha Gloomy.
Práve ste dopozerali prvú časť videopodcastu, ktorá je zdarma pre všetkých. Ak si chcete pozrieť celý diel, môžete tak urobiť zakúpením si predplatného, čím nás zároveň podporíte v tvorbe ďalšieho kvalitného obsahu. Urobiť tak môžete na našom webe hovoríme.eu alebo priamo na platforme Hero. Za vašu podporu vám ďakujeme.